got a little place near the beach. We watch the sailboats out at sea. And we ride along the Palisades.
All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are having a great day, a wonderful week. Hope you are staying out of the cold weather if you are subject to it, as I am. Welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk gaming, Gunpla, and Gundam. I'm your host, Steven, aka Midnight Hatter, and joining me as always is the well-dressed Adam Blue. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you. And this is actually unintended cosplay, if anyone could figure out who I actually dressed up as.
Interesting. I don't know if I can venture a guess.
I'll let you guys guess because I feel like someone's going to get it. Because I was looking in the mirror today because I had to brush my hair. I've been letting it grow out. I had this call I had to be on. And so I'm brushing it and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm beep from beep. And I was like, this is awesome. I took a picture, sent it to my dad. He laughed. So you can get the age range, I guess, if my dad understood it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good
Unless
point.
he's
Because
just laughing just to be. I will give a hint. There is a commonality in our names.
interesting.
Yeah. So good luck, guys.
All right, well, good luck to you, chat.
Nothing
speaking
Gundam
of-
related.
Nothing
Walter
Gundam related.
White.
Yeah, because I was going to say, your dad wouldn't have picked up on that one.
No, we'll see throughout the stream, and then I'll say what it is.
But yeah, speaking of chat, how are you all doing? I see a lot of familiar familiar
Yeah,
faces in
they're
there.
famous.
Famous faces in there. Ultronymous, Ian, Dan Vince, No One, and Gundam Wing. Good to see you guys. Thank you for tuning in today. And speaking of Ian, I just want to say that today's stream is brought to you by Nonstop Gamers, aka Nonstop Collectors, aka Ian, our good friend and supporter, which
Check it out.
I do believe, don't quote me on this, don't hold me accountable, but I do believe that he is starting to branch into, the realm of content creation. But you're going to have to tune in on his Discord to get that information. So links
put
to
it in the universe.
Oh, yeah.
So he has to make content.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm your accountability partner. I'm going to blow you up online. But no, thank you so much for your support, Ian, and your friendship. It is always good. And we haven't had a chance to chat. Actually, I haven't had a chance to chat with any of the supporters. Recently we've had a lot of things going on lately, but we're going to get back to that. We're going to get back to supporters chats, supporters only streams. So yeah, check out Nonstop Collectors in the description below on YouTube, of course. There's no links on Twitch. But in case you missed it, I was really a big fan of your video that you dropped on Monday, Adam. The RX-78-2 explained. That was just cool. That was just a treat,
Yeah, that's the stuff I like to do. Having the music, the atmosphere. It's almost like engulfing yourself into what it is. And that's what I like about Gundam and the things I get into. I like to feel like I'm in that world for a little bit.
Yeah, it like engages all the senses. I love it. Except for smell, I guess. One day we'll introduce smell-o-vision on YouTube.
Some USB dongle you plug in that they can download sequences to cause smells. I don't know.
God, I hope not. Like, can you imagine smelling some live streamers? I can.
Yeah, that would be that. That would cause the first viral maybe diseases that happen electronically. I don't know.
Viral and multiple meanings there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's so funny. You see all these people wearing their Apple goggles now, which just looks silly. I mean, have you seen some of these videos online of like people?
I've seen some people talking about them. Yeah.
Oh man, we're heading straight for cyber new type territory.
I feel like it. I feel like that's going to happen.
Yeah. But I'm excited about today's topic, and you're not going to shut me up. I'm going to keep talking about this because it's very important to me. I mentioned this last week on the Gundam Explained show about the UC 0088 Zeta Gundam, currently available on P Bandai. And I even made a thread on Twitter about it.
Yeah, I saw that Twitter thread. So if you're not following Steven, follow, because that reminded me to pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. But, I'm going to keep harping on it. And today I think we're going to do something kind of exciting because I actually have with me today the high grade Revive Zeta Gundam and the high grade 0088 Zeta Gundam. And we're just going to go through and compare because I feel like you really can't appreciate all of the features and the differences between these two kits. You know, there's those pictures of like they highlight the parts of the kit that are different from the Revived kit. I think it's going to be a lot more apparent when you actually see them side by side. So we're going to do
Okay.
that. And I thought it'd be fun to just talk about like even the difference between Zeta Gundam and Double Zeta Gundam. You know, they never really talk about the repairs that were made to the Zeta and the
Oh yeah.
differences that you know, you visually there's a couple of differences that you can see in the animation, but like, you know, they never really talk about it. And we were just
Yeah.
talking about this before the stream, Adam. Like you mentioned the Double Zeta Gundam, right?
Yeah, it's in Double Zeta apparently near the end. It's a new version of it, but they never really talk about it. Or in on one hand, that's kind of cool because that's part of the world building where things happen that you are happening in the world, even if they don't have to be told to you. So there's this world that's going on. But sometimes it's neat when that happens. Like it could be like an offhand comment between two engineers about the capacitor on the chest piece. No one knows what they're talking about, but oh, they're actually implying the changes made to something. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that.
And I mean, typically you'll get that in most anime, right? The mid-season mobile suit upgrade, which
Yeah.
is a lot more dramatic. Like I think in Zeta Gundam when you get the upgrade from the Mark II to the Zeta, but there's really not an upgrade from like, well, you get the upgrade from the Zeta to the Double Zeta, but like you don't get like the Double Zeta to the enhanced Double Zeta, you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it was very interesting because something else I think you've brought up in the past or others, it's like Double Zeta was kind of reframed in a way of how they tell these Gundam stories because it was more of like a group of people. You know, it was about this team,
Yeah,
and
that
then
was
it,
the
it
first
featured
existence of like the Gundam team.
yeah, and it featured favorites that everyone likes, like the different mobile suits, and so I thought that was a neat that's like another example of how Double Zeta was trying to change what Gundam shows were, even being the same at its core, where it's
Yeah.
kind of mature themed in a way, but I guess just the setup, you know.
Yeah, and it was also pretty cool the way that like the pilots would change. You know, like sometimes Judo would choose to use the Zeta over the Double Zeta
Yeah.
because he needed speed over power, and you know, sometimes I mean, Eno obviously got to pilot the Zeta Gundam. However,
Mhm.
it was limited in its abilities due to its Zaku head. But
Zaku head. Yeah.
but we're going to talk about that as well because that's actually featured in the 0088 instruction manual, which I think is pretty
Oh,
hilarious.
okay.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about some of these special features that are built in. But before we get too far into it, I suppose I should go ahead and change my screen over so that you guys can see
Yeah.
what we're looking at here up on the slab. So here on the left, we've got the high grade Revive, you know, Gundam Evolution Project Zeta, which this is like the current high grade Zeta that's available. $23 on most websites. And it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's, as far as posability goes, it's better than the previous high grade, which I would have shown that off, but unfortunately I've started cutting it apart to turn it into the core Zeta Gundam. So like I was
Oh,
like,
cool.
shoot, I should have I should have waited to do that until after this sort of stream. But now, obviously, these are not panel lined. I did not apply any of the color correcting stickers that we've got for
Mm,
both of them. So this is just a raw, out of the box look at what you are going to get from each of these kits. And then here on the right, we have the P Bandai UC 0088 Zeta Gundam, which, you know, you can see there's obviously some very obvious differences between the two, but we're going to get into all of the granular differences too because they are almost two entirely different kits. But
interesting.
yeah. So, oh, and I should mention, available on P Bandai now for $24. So price-wise, they are comparable. And I always, you know, Adam, you and I are probably going to be pinned to the wall for, you know, like constantly defending the practice of P Bandai.
Yeah, oh,
But
yeah.
like, you know, the number one thing that people have against P Bandai is price, right? You're talking about $1 difference if you get in on the pre-order. Now, like
Yeah.
I mentioned on stream last week, if you miss the pre-order, this kit then becomes like $80 when it's purchased secondhand. So if you don't get in on the pre-order, you have to wait until a re-release like is going on right now.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I spent 70 on the Toads Ritter. Then it was up on P Bandai not too long ago. Waiting for this GM Spartan. Came up on P Bandai. So yeah, just patience.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I remember telling myself, like, you know what? If it does go back up on P Bandai, I'm gonna get another one.
That's cool. That's cool.
So, first, I guess you have the obvious differences, and this is one of the things that I was curious if they had made this change. Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah, cat.
Is the nose cone, or I guess more specifically speaking, the shield, because oh,
All right.
whoa. See, and that's one of the features of the Revive kit is that it actually just comes apart at the waist. Now, I'm not
Actually,
sure.
let me grab mine real quick. I don't know what version I have. I can't reach it from here, so that's not going to happen. I usually use a stool to put the stuff at the top, and I don't know what version I have, but they all transform, right? The high grade, the two different high grade versions.
Yes,
Okay.
they're both parts formers, so
Yeah.
you have to kind of take them apart and reconnect them to get that. And that's a good shout out actually, is that because they're both parts formers, they actually use the exact same mold, like the like box that. Let's see if I can grab it here. It's worth noting that I have not transformed either of these yet. So, yeah, this part right here that all of the parts connect to, it's the exact same one between these two kits. So they're actually pretty interchangeable between, like, the parts that you can swap on and off between them. But the first obvious changes, let's see if I can push this in, get some close-ups. So here we've got the nose cone / shield from the standard high grade Zeta.
Yeah.
It's got like this little kind of
little bump.
Yeah, little notch right there,
Yeah.
which is missing from the 88 version. The 88 version has kind of a I want to try and get this thing to focus so that
It's like
not
tapered on both ends, on both sides.
It's kind of thicker, honestly. It's a little bit more what I would say kind of reinforced, and that makes sense considering how the tip of the nose cone was damaged during the fight with Shirako.
Oh, interesting.
So that's like a little lore bit, is it's like, the tip of the Zeta Gundam nose cone probably would have been crumpled in after colliding with the O, and so when you have the updated version, it's got a little bit more of a reinforced tip of the shield. So I think that that's a pretty neat little call out feature.
That is actually, because it's like lore based.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that I love. Like,
Yeah.
And to be honest, that's the only thing I can think of that would make sense between these two. Everything else is like kind of arbitrary.
Oh, like almost just kind of like as they're doing it, they just kind of redesign here and there just for fun.
Exactly. So, like, for instance, the another big difference between the two is the shoulder. Here on the previous version of the shoulder, I don't know if you can see how the shape of it is the same between the two, but it's kind of like there's a reinforced band over the top of the 88 version. So, like, there's this extra little piece that goes over the top, and then it's slightly shorter. It's not as angular.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. So I have the robot spirits right here, and it actually has that band at the top.
Yes.
And I have the metal robot spirits, and it doesn't. But both of them have that little notch on the
on the chest?
shield. No, on the shield. Oh, on the chest. Oh, interesting. These don't.
So yeah, the chest piece, like where the cockpit is located on the standard, is smooth, whereas the UC88 has that little notch on there, which is, you see that on the Zeta Plus as well. It actually, I mean, just in general, all around, the standard Zeta is much more angular, longer, sleeker, whereas the 88 version is a little bit bigger, a little bit more squared off. I would
Now,
say,
have you measured any, like, would you say, like, from shoulder to shoulder, or, like, the chest is in general, like, bigger?
I wouldn't say that it's got a bigger chest, but like, like I said, for
It's a little
instance,
wider.
the shoulders are shorter, and then if you look at the front skirts on the pelvis
Hmm,
area, the
yeah.
skirts on the 0088 version are square and shorter than the longer angular skirt pieces on the standard one.
Interesting, because it's almost like there was an attempt to redo it based on the parts forming piece,
Yeah,
which is kind of strange, because it's almost like that's intentional then.
exactly. It's like
Yeah.
a deliberate, um it's like a deliberate design change, right?
Yeah.
Um and then of course, this is the thing that I always mention is the fact that the wings, it's the same wing shape and the same sort of wing design, but the 88 version has color separated
That's
parts.
nice.
So it removes that extra element of having to apply color correcting stickers. But both of the wings, and I would be remiss if I didn't point this out, of course, that the red parts um of the 88 version. Oh geez, if I can do this without it falling apart.
Not a Zeta.
Not, yeah, it's not a Zeta if it's not a hand grenade, right? So it's worth noting that the smallest bit of the wing is solid red instead of being solid black. So
Hmm,
whereas
or even just, part of it being red. That's
exactly,
interesting.
so while the standard one has color correcting stickers to add the red bands to the side, the 88
Oh,
version has color correcting stickers to cover up the red here and turn that part black.
well, that's actually pretty smart.
Yeah, but so I would say that you have less overall stickers, like,
Yeah. That's pretty cool then. Now, what about the way that the wing binders themselves attach to the back? Like, because sometimes they can be floppy and move around a lot. Is it the same?
yeah, they both have the same attachment, which is this little sort of L joint. So
Yeah.
it snaps in from the top here, and it has a peg that plugs into the back of the wing. So
Okay.
the connection is the same, but the sort of architecture of the wing itself is different because obviously it has to account for the the red parts that clip onto the outside. But for me, obviously more color separation is going to be better than less.
Yeah.
So that covers the wings. There's also the question of the legs. So you I don't know if you can really see it, but the legs on the standard high grade are just ever so slightly sleeker and skinnier than the legs on the 88. And it's only the outside. So can you see how the outside of the leg is just like
Yeah.
rounder?
That's right. And this almost makes it look like the original design of the Zeta. It's because the original, when you look at that original artwork, it is a little chunkier.
Exactly. And
But
that's where, I think I said on Twitter as much, like, to me the 88 version is like the definitive high grade. Like, it's, to me, it's a little bit more anime accurate. It's got this extra little panel line down here that the
oh
standard one
yeah,
does not have.
that's great. And really, all you would have to do is switch the shield for it to be accurate to either uh show, I
Yeah,
guess, because the little notch on the shield.
exactly. Now it does say that I've got the little graph up here that has like all the differences. So we've touched
Oh,
on, the chest, the wings, the nose cone, the shoulders. It does say that there's a difference between the kneecaps, but honestly, I cannot see it. Yeah, I guess
the
this one's a little wider.
yeah, it's a little wider. Even that top notch area, it's a little narrower on the old one.
Yeah, and kind of
Yeah.
taller.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Hmm.
again, it's just all around. The 88 version is a little chunkier, a little less sleek. But I like
Yeah.
that.
I do too. I feel like it represents kind of that anime style.
Yeah, you know how I feel about anime accuracy.
Yeah, or in terms of the original intent, the drawing, but then sometimes in animation, depending on the pose, it could who knows what it could be. I feel like there could be a different figure for each pose that you see in the shows.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons where it's like you really can't go to the animation because like, given whatever scene you're watching, it could look entirely different.
Yeah.
Um and then it does say that there is a difference between the heads, but let's see if we can really identify it. I think it's really just comes down to the fact that the 88 version has like a shorter kind of stouter face. I don't know. Let's remove the heads and see if we
Yeah, it's
can't
really
get
hard
them.
to tell right off the bat, but I would be curious.
So here we have the two heads. On the left is still the Revive version, and on the right is the 88 version.
Yeah, the left, it looks like the sensor at the top is a little taller.
Yep,
And then, yeah, I think in general it's a little taller, but only by a little bit. Whereas, like you were saying, the right side, it is a little wider, but it's just by a little.
and so it really reminds me of like the differences that we talked about with the Zeta Gundam Verka, right? Like the Verka has that same sort of, that same sort of sleekness and everything's kind of angular compared to say like the Master Grade 2.0, which,
Mm,
kind of has like a blockier face and then I guess you could even like compare some of the the nose cone of the Master Grade 2.0 has like the little tab on it that the standard high grade does. Um yeah, every Zeta kind of has its own quirks, doesn't it?
yeah, and it just reminds me of like when I got the Robot Spirits aerial versus the high grade aerial, where it's first glance they're exactly the same, but when you look at it's like, wait, everything is different measurements. It's very strange. I love it because it's done on purpose. What's that artist's, interpretation? Um, just
Exactly.
kind of like this interpretation here of the MS ensemble Zeta. Love it. Love this thing. And
Yeah,
it's got a notch on its no, it doesn't have the notch on its shield. So
so you see that does it have the notch on the chest?
it does not.
Okay, so it's hard to tell whether it's the double Zeta version or the Zeta version.
They didn't consult with us.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that like all these little design changes and some of them you're right, maybe some of these changes are not necessarily reflected in the anime. Some of them are just done to the kit to give it its own sort of characteristics and its own sort of look that make it a part.
Yeah.
A, a,
16X is asking if the 88 head gets caught in the collar.
uh it it does, yeah. So
Yeah.
like the just the height of the collar, I assume, is
Yeah.
that yeah.
I guess that's kind of the common thing with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And speaking of the head, of course, like I mentioned, this is one of the things that I would say is a detriment to P Bandai is that their instruction manuals are obviously a little bit less. There's less to them than the
Less
standard high
fun.
grade
It,
instruction
it's
manuals.
it's not as interesting when you're sitting on the toilet.
Yeah, exactly. Um, When you read some of these high grade manuals, and I always go to the Titans version of the Mark II as an example, because it has that whole paragraph about the lore of the Mark IIs, and it's the only time that you ever hear them mention the existence of a fourth
Oh,
Mark
fourth one.
II.
And you said that's in the high grade manual?
Yeah, the high
Oh, cool.
grade of the revived version of the Titans Mark II.
Okay.
But yeah, here we see that this is actually a called out feature, is that you can swap out the Zeta Gundam 88 head for a Zaku HG40 MS06. Oh, but parts are not included. You know, I
Which
feel like they probably could have
simplest
thrown in
thing.
just one runner,
I
like
know.
the small, just the Zaku head.
But what is the HD 40 supposed to refer to revive or uh
I would hope
just
so.
okay.
I assume it's the revived version of the Zaku. But I mean honestly any version would fit, right? Like,
Yeah, I would think so. I think those well, swap the heads. Are you able to swap those Zeta heads? No, those the two Zeta
oh, the
heads.
two Zetas? Oh yeah, I assume
I
so.
wonder if because that's the next, I think, idea from here, especially when you get your other one. Like, is there a way to build the like the definitive version?
That's a good point. Is yeah, I think that obviously you can kind of combine parts from, you know, personally I think I would probably take, not, you see, honestly, I think that the 88 is just a better
All around.
design all
Yeah.
around. Like I prefer
Especially
the shoulders, I prefer the head,
something as
everything
little
about
as
it.
that, the panel line, that they
Yeah,
added on the skirt
that
or the
extra panel
yeah,
line.
yeah.
There's actually, is there more detail on the back of the wings? No, the wing binders are pretty much the same. The feet construction, all of that is exactly the same. Like,
Oh, okay.
now it does say that there is a difference between the forearms, particularly the blue part of the forearm. It looks like the 0088 version is slightly bulkier.
Yeah.
It kind of extends back a little further.
Oh, and there's a little more angularity to, yeah, how it extends back too. More
Yeah, it kind of
detail.
has that little
That's neat.
cutaway in
Yeah.
the panel lining. So
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of these little subtle differences that I think kind of get missed when you're just kind of looking at the photo. Although honestly, I think I do prefer the revive head on that body. Just kind of gives it a little bit of extra height. It's
Yeah, I agree. That is something about the revive head is the sensor being a little taller. I think kind of helps with the Zeta's face in general.
yeah, I agree. It gives it that more almost like a
Like
more samurai helmet looking.
right, strong angularity coming from
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
But both of them actually come with the Hyper Mega Launcher, which I know was a big point of contention for
Oh yeah,
the
the Verka.
for the Verka, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, that was one of the big disappointments about the Verka, is the lack of accessories. And I mean the 2.0 comes with a stand and like a
Yeah.
catapult deck.
Yeah, that's and it even attaches with the Mark II version as
Yeah,
well. So it even has function, yeah, with another.
but we can even break out the micrometer here and
Oh,
just see, like, you know, the chest of the high grade revive is 26.8 millimeters, and we can compare that to the chest of the 88 version, which is a 26.6. So it's actually,
wow. It to me, it looked like
it looked wider.
wider. Yeah.
The height of
Interest
the shoulders, we've got 21.8 on the revive versus 18.2 on
Interesting.
the 88. So there are like some very distinct little changes. I think even the center of the pelvis is shorter on the
You can
88
say
version.
penis. It's okay.
Hey, it's not about length, it's about girth, is what they tell me. Uh, so 31.3 millimeters long on the Revive versus 30.6 on the
Mm.
88. So it
I
looks
know
like,
which
I
one
mean,
Ruloko is riding. Wait, that is inappropriate.
oh yeah, well, let's we can measure out the width of the legs as well. So at their widest point, we've got 24.8 millimeters on the Revive versus that waist is killing me that it keeps falling apart like that. 25.1. So it's actually really not that huge of a difference in terms of raw width. It just looks rounder, those legs.
That's interesting. It's like very minor things, but it just makes it look different.
And like, can you see the change in the angle from,
Yeah.
this one's kind of angled upwards, whereas this one's angled out?
And yeah, and that panel line there kind of helps define that
Yeah.
shape. Yeah, that's
But it's interesting because the inner side is the exact same. They used the same inner calf, but used different outers.
and so really I'd like to figure out like if it's true that when they were drawing the mobile suits for Double Zeta that they did add those little changes, and so maybe they're using references when they're like, okay, let's make a, double O 88 version. Let's look at references from the Double Zeta era. I don't know.
Yeah, I pulled up the wiki here, and I was like, well, let's see like what kind of damage was actually dealt to it that would have required the modifications
Oh
be
yeah.
made. But there really isn't anything specifically mentioned. It says that Camille Badan bests the PMX-003 the O. However, Camille was rendered in a vegetative state by a powerful psychic attack from Shirako. Both the Zeta Gundam and Camille were later recovered by AUG pilot Fa Yuriri. Now, in the first sentence of the first Neo Zeon War, it says, after undergoing repairs, the Zeta Gundam was mainly piloted by the new type Judo Ashta. But that's it. It just says repairs. It doesn't.
Yeah, doesn't really detail what and yeah, maybe they didn't detail that, and maybe that easily then allows an explanation for why there can be changes to a you know double Zeta version.
Yeah,
So
and I was expecting to find like different concept art, like how Okawara does like those
yeah,
the standard line art for all those mobile suits, but there's no difference between, I mean, well, there's just no version of that 88.
that was like a concept design. Yeah, or yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
So it's very interesting.
yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I think that this particular Zeta design, oh man, there's all kind of silly like variants on the wiki for all of the different Zetas.
I bet.
I think that this 88 Zeta design is just overall more visually appealing, and as a kit, obviously more color separation is better than less.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So that's my sales pitch for it.
Oh, cool. Well, I already picked up mine. Is it still available,
Yeah,
or did
I
we?
think at the pre-orders open until June 2nd. So
Oh, wow. Okay,
yeah,
there's no excuse
yeah, you guys have got
unless
some
you
time.
unless you didn't get into Gundam until like later this year.
Exactly right. But yeah, I'm like I said, I can't sing the praises of this kit enough, and it's just such an interesting idea because I would love to see more of that. You see it a lot in GBO2, right? You have the enhanced Double Zeta Gundam. It would be kind of cool if there was like a support version of the Zeta that was
You
the
know what?
88 version.
That's what we should do later is look at the artwork because I was able to determine that the high new that's in GBO2 is actually based off of the metal build version. Down to
Oh.
even hard points that were really just for the figure, they molded that in.
That's
Um,
really interesting.
and I forgot what part of it was on there, but yeah, so I wonder if then we'll have to look at that later and look at the Zetas that they have in GBO2 and see, like, did they model it after a certain version?
Yeah, like the Hyper Mega Launcher version, that's the
Yep.
support one.
Yeah. Because yeah, I noticed that they do that. They'll usually in GBO2 they'll model it off of a existing Gunpla action figure if it wasn't in a previous game
Yeah,
where they
and I
just
mean,
use
why
that
wouldn't
model.
they? Because,
Yeah.
it's like they have the design there. Um
And real quick, I want to do an update of, and I'm going to show you guys.
There we go. Did anyone guess it?
No, and
No?
his name is Adam in the
In
movie.
Beetlejuice?
Yeah. I and again, I'm looking in the mirror, kind of like a Beetlejuice thing, right? No, you don't have to look in the mirror to say his name 3 times. But no, I'm just combing my hair and I'm like, there we go. I just cosplayed accidentally.
That is hilarious. Well, see, what you should have done is, like, if you had some eyes that you could do the whole, like, or
Oh
wait,
yeah.
what does he do the
I
what
think it was with the mouth or the nose
yeah,
or
he, like,
something where it,
stretches
like,
it
took
out and
over. Yeah. I'll have to watch it. You know they're coming out with a new movie?
oh, really?
It's called Beetlejuice.
Well, they're just trying to set themselves up for the
3rd.
trilogy then, huh? Yeah, it looks like, everyone said, they recognized it immediately when they saw the pic, but
Yeah, it's so crazy. That's funny because I even thought it was tacky, a red undershirt with no, but I was like, I was already wearing it, so I was like, "Yeah,
no, red
that's funny."
undershirt's fantastic. And honestly, it's a very Gundam themed outfit. You know, red, white, and blue. You got your primary
Oh,
colors.
there you go. Yeah, I got my old type wear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice. So yeah, trying to think, like, were there any other things that were kind of mentioned in Double Zeta that would kind of account for some of these changes? And
Yeah. No, yeah, that's the one thing. It's they don't really talk about that stuff, but yeah, yeah, it's very interesting.
but yeah, I mean, and also available on P Bandai now. You've got the mass production Lifrith Gundam from
That looks
Witch from
cool.
Mercury. You've got the Varguil from Moon Gundam, which, you
That's a
know,
good one.
honestly, having reviewed some of the Moon designs a lot more closely, they don't seem that far outside of, like, UC looking mobile suits. I would say that they have a lot more panel lines, like they're a lot busier
Right.
looking.
Exactly. I think that's where they share in common is like the way they do the panel lining.
Yeah.
But other than that, they share a lot with Char's counterattack.
Yeah.
Like, uh, there's a lot of that design philosophy. Man, that one looks sick. I'm looking at it right now. Should
Oh,
I or
the Varguil.
yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
Now,
Oh, go ahead.
no, do you happen to know much about that suit? Was it a mass-produced suit? Was it just for an ace
So
pilot?
yeah, it was just a one-off Saikamu suit. You know, obviously it went on to become like a prototype version of the Zazabi. But you know, it had its head blown off. um,
Oh, and that's where the moon comes in?
and that's where the Moon Gundam comes from. Is that the Psycho Gundam Mark IV had its head removed and put on the Varguil, and that's where you get, like, you know, basically instead of using the standard funnel rack like the way that the Zazabi does, it uses the G doors that were, you know,
Mm,
that were fused into the colony.
yeah, that
So I mean I love the fact that there's that much lore involved around it. I really wish that there was a high grade um Psycho Gundam Mark IV that had, like, the G doors. You
yeah.
can make it pretty easily because if you just take the Moon Gundam and then I think it's like basically a Mark II body and you put the Moon Gundam head on a Mark II body and then
Oh, wow.
change the way that the funnel, like the G doors sit on the back. Obviously the Moon Gundam has them in the crescent shape.
Yeah.
The Psycho Gundam Mark IV almost has them like wing binders. I've seen a lot of people make that build, you know, custom, but I think it would be cool just to see it as its own thing.
Yeah, you know, I haven't looked at that much, but you're right. That looks awesome. That really does.
It's pretty freaking sweet.
And it almost looks like it's a moon. The name of the designer, forget his name. I think it has a P in it.
yeah,
But anyway, it's like he took a Mark II and then kind of added his own touch onto it. That
exactly.
that looks, yeah, looks really good.
It's
Hmm,
pretty sweet. Now I forget, do you have one of the yeah, you have the high grade moon Gundam,
I
right?
do. Yeah. And you know what? I feel like uh, it's one of those things where it's such a good design, but I think it's wasted on a high grade. Because, like, I like it, but it just feels too cheap for the design that it has. I
Yeah.
don't know yeah, that would be a good Robot Spirits, real grade.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they didn't make it a real grade because it already has so much detail packed into it that it
Yeah,
makes it a very easy transition to a real grade. And I think even more than just being a standard high grade, it also is one of the more like mass produced ones. Like when I go to Hobby Lobby, they have tons of Moon Gundams.
yeah.
Have you noticed that? It's like it's a very
That's when you can come across it a lot, and I don't think I did when I first got into Gundam, but it seems like, yeah, that must be just one of those that maybe people are buying or whatever, so, yeah. Yeah,
now let me
that's cool
see
stuff.
here. Let me see if I can actually pull this up because I'm going to convert to studio mode here for just a moment
Okay.
so that I can. I'm doing some engineering on the fly here. Hopefully we can.
Oh, no one is saying it's Ipe Gyobu was the moon designer, so I knew there was a P in there somewhere.
Yeah. Two of them, in fact.
Yeah. A PP, if you will.
So let me see here because I do want to show this off because I think that this is going to be a very good visual. I should have had it ready ahead of time, so I apologize for that. But let's see.
Oh, Robbie Curly Fry, Robert saying new Moon Gundam, but NU Moon Gundam.
Oh, I
That's
like that.
that is a good one.
Let's see if I can get this to look right. I've got a very small preview window in my. All right, let's hop back into our screen share view here. So this is some of that key art from Double Zeta Gundam, as you can see.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that, like,
That's totally off.
that is, I mean, first of all, talk about anime accuracy. The shoulders are way too angular. The head is way too big on the kit. We need to shrink that down, make the skirt size.
Or we need a figure of that.
Yeah, exactly. This is what we need. We need to. Um, this is just silly to me, but it's interesting because that shoulder detail is missing from this art. The skirt armor is the same as the previous one. Um, these fingers are way too narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I really do believe that like they probably had like 4 or 5 changes that were anime accurate, and then they just kind of winged it. uh, so this looks like it's from Double Zeta as well. As you can
Wow.
see, the
Pronounced shoulders. There's something about
yeah,
that where it
it,
looks cool, but it looks like a different mobile suit.
it's definitely got like that almost 90s comic art feel. Like it looks like this is
Yeah,
like Rob Liefeld drew the Zeta
exactly.
Gundam.
Captain America chest. That was
Exactly
it was?
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um. Oh, what is this from? I don't. Oh, this is from Narrative.
Oh, yeah, some
Yeah.
of the flashback scenes.
Mm-hmm. And you see, it's got the little nose cone detail.
Yeah.
From the little little feature in there. Trying to see if there are any other. Well, that looks more like a Zeta Plus, to be honest.
Yeah, looks cool though.
Yeah, definitely cool.
Hmm.
Now, if we look at the Zeta Zaku, you can see kind of that little notch in the
Yeah,
cockpit,
interesting. Yeah.
but yeah, nothing really that sticks out. Yeah, in this one, same deal. Like all of those little changes that we just talked about, not a single
Not
one
even
of them.
visible. Yeah, that's it's fascinating.
So I thought that would be interesting. I was like, man, I see all this like double Zeta art, and then let's take a look and see how anime accurate it is. And turns out
Yeah, can't
it's not.
even use that to determine it. Huh.
Can't trust
Well,
anybody.
and it's interesting because I feel like that's pretty much gone away nowadays with animation, especially with when it comes to mobile suits because now, they're mainly doing it in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that single model that can always be used, referenced, imported, especially like if they're making a model kit version, they can probably use those as reference. So
Pretty much, yeah.
we'll probably see less and less of that. And you know what would be a good idea? And it's almost like the version Kotoki thing, but start doing more of that. Make other, I think the RX-78 gets that treatment a lot. You have the G40, you have the Beyond Global. It would be
Mm-hmm.
neat to just see some other mobile suits get some sort of designer treatment.
I think
Um,
that would be awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But oh yeah, that actually reminds me. You mentioned, like 3D models and things like that, and like I found myself analyzing the runners to some of these kits as well while I was building, and
mhm.
it's very interesting to me that you can actually see exactly where runners were like copied from one another. So, like for instance, here we have the runner for the. This is just the gray parts that were on that P Bandai Zeta. And since you have to use two of these for, various parts of the kit, you can look at the silhouette and see that this was literally the exact same piece
Can you
that
move it
they
over
just
just
kind
a
of
little
like
bit?
cut it off.
Can you move it over just a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, it's just like that part of that runner.
So
Huh.
it's like if you're familiar with anything, like if you're familiar with injection molding and you're familiar with like what is it called? Short shooting, which is like when you don't fill the mold enough, like it's like a short shot, so you don't get the full print. Basically, that's what you're getting, but it's like intentionally short shooting
Hmm.
that runner so that you only get the part that you need. And I think it's interesting because some of those parts actually line up with the Revive Zeta. So it's like you can tell that they were like, okay, well, we know we're gonna need the gray parts because the gray parts are the same between the two. There's really like it's only the outer armor pieces that are different. So like the interior pieces are the same print
Yeah.
almost.
Huh.
But there is something I have to say, like I know, and no one in chat's cracking me up with this. Maybe it is Liefeld, but because we can't see the Zeta's feet.
That's good.
I have to say that there's a charm about the hand-drawn animation that I think you lose when you go with the 3D models.
Yeah. Of
Because
course.
even
Yeah.
though everything's always like everything's always on model, the problem that you get is like, you don't get any of that like foreshortening that you get in like comic art that kind of adds emphasis and
Like a
adds,
cartoony perspective.
yeah,
As they're having to change perspectives on certain panels, and like a lot of times when the artist is having to draw that, it's hard to be super accurate because it's not based on a 3D model in the space. It's like, okay, let me draw perspective. And that
exactly.
adds character. It really does.
Yeah, I think that what I would like to see is in that sort of 3D animation, if there was a way to use um like focal length in order to create that visual distortion on the 3D model, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever
Yeah.
seen when people will take selfies and it's like you compare when you take a selfie from here versus like farther out, and you zoom in
Yep.
and you get that like sort of warping because of the lens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think I had sent you something maybe a month or two ago, wasn't it? Where like someone used Blender and they created animation, 3D, but it looked like 2D. I forgot what that was, but
Yeah,
I feel like it's one of those interesting things. It's where you add the defects, I guess you would call it, to then make it look like it's from that time. But then again, the people that enjoy this are people that have grown up or are used to that. Once you get a
right.
generation that doesn't grow up with hand-drawn animation, they're never going to care about it.
Yeah, they just don't know what
Yeah.
they're missing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I wonder if it's one of those things where the only reason we like it is because that's all we had as a frame of reference. Whereas older generation or younger, yeah, older in the future are going to not care about that. I don't know. I don't know.
You know, I don't think that it's something that is exclusive to generations because, for instance, I watched a video on YouTube the other day about the movie The Witch, and
Oh,
it brought to my attention some of the sort of directorial choices that director made when it came to framing
Robert
things.
Eggers? Or am I thinking of someone
Yeah,
else?
Eggers. Yeah.
Eggers? Okay.
And you saw that movie, right?
Oh, yeah. Loved it.
Yeah,
Great movie.
and for a debut film, like a period horror movie is
Where it was a slow burn, but was extremely fascinating throughout. Like, yeah.
yeah, very cerebral, very suspenseful. So yeah, if you
Yeah.
guys haven't seen it, go check out The Witch, or maybe it's like pronounced The Vitch because it's like
Yeah.
two V's. I don't know. It was a very interesting design choice in the logo,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that movie got a $4 million budget, which is unheard of for like a rookie director, but it's also still not a lot for a
Yeah.
period horror movie. And
Exactly.
he made every dollar count for that film. But one of the choices that he made was to shoot in a very unique perspective. It's not quite 4:3, but it's not 16:9 like the typical letterbox HD format that we're used to
Mhm.
seeing with like, big Hollywood
Right.
movies. And the reason he did that is A, because it was more familiar to him, like, and this kind of supports what you're saying about like it's what he was used to growing up watching movies. But there was also the added benefit of he could pack like the entire when they had like these cast shots where they had like the entire family is in one room. He could get like a nice tight shot of the entire family standing there without them being like spread out across this wide frame, and it gives you this much more claustrophobic view when
Yeah.
you can see the ceiling and the floor in a single shot, instead of like when you're typically looking at a widescreen, you can only see like from the waist up kind of thing.
And that
um
worked really well because they're in this cabin, they're surrounded by trees, so any moment where the camera is on it, you feel like you're in that. Yeah,
exactly.
it's pretty good.
So, well, I say all that to say that these design choices and these types of animation styles, we could attribute them to just generational differences, but I think that some of those things are kind of evergreen, and you might choose to do something a certain way, not necessarily because it's how things used to be, but because you're trying to evoke a certain feeling.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Do you have another example?
Another
Because
good
I know The
example.
Witch is a good one, and then you can always look at how sometimes directors prefer practical for some things,
Yeah, that's
um,
always
or not using a digital camera, because you know how when the camera moves around, sometimes it's, like, super cartoony, like, when they're trying to just film CG,
yeah.
but instead, like, the 2014 Godzilla film, even though there was a lot of CG going on, he had the camera set to be more like a camera would act.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like programming a digital camera to act like a real camera.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's a lot of directors that do that. I think Eggers also in The Witch, he wanted to shoot on film, but they couldn't afford it, so he like made certain compromises as far as the digital went in order to kind of
Oh,
get the film look. But I
yeah.
mean, there are certain there are certain directors that are, obviously much more reputable. Like, you've got like Scorsese that like uses very specific lenses that like I think like there are only 9 of them in existence.
Oh wow.
Um, I mean, these are like, $10 million like camera lenses that have been restored from like the 60s that they, retrofit to work on modern cameras. And that's one of those things where it's like, oh, you know what? The Batman was one of the movies that with Robert Pattinson that they
Yeah.
used old lenses from film cameras and
That movie did a lot of cool stuff to look good, like or
yeah,
to look I say look good, but to look like classic high-end filmmaking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because you get like a natural vignette from those lenses that
Mhm.
you can add it in post, but you can almost kind of tell it, and it kind of goes against um the sort of filmmaking that like George Lucas does. Like cuz George Lucas obviously, he thinks he can do everything in the editing room.
Right.
But I think that there are certain filmmaking techniques that can only be done in the camera.
I really agree with that approach. Like, how much can you get done in the camera so you have to do very little? And and even if what you're doing in the camera, the very little then you're doing in editing is just removing like a wire or removing something that was allowing the scene to happen. Yeah, I wanted to go back to Batman real quick because
Yeah.
another thing I really appreciated is when he in the Batman when anytime he was like gliding through the city, they would have the like camera like on him. Like when you would see like a jet flying and it's like the camera on the jet, like that adds more of that realism to it.
Yeah. It's much more immersive.
Yeah.
Um and yes, you can create that effect, in post, but I don't know, I think that it's probably less compelling. Um
And I was even reading something about cameras and how with digital cameras, there's this certain thing, and I forget what it's called. It's this thing that to get the frame rate that spins around. I don't, but anyway, in digital cameras, it makes the quality worse than if it was on a film camera.
Interesting.
And I forget. I'll have to send you the video on it because I was reading. It's like why when a director prefers a film camera, a non-digital, this is why. But a lot of times it's something a viewer's not gonna notice, but when you're editing, you're gonna notice. And
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
And I mean, when you're editing that, it can change your whole it can change your own interpretation of what the scene is supposed to look like
Yeah.
to the point where, you might end up making different design decisions as a result of it. Um I mean, I'm going to make a whole video about this later, but I actually discovered a particular ND filter for my camera, and I mentioned this to you,
Oh,
Adam,
yeah, that's
personally,
right.
but
Yeah.
I did want to give kind of just a brief talk, to for the sake of the stream. So there is a CPL ND filter that I put on my camera. It's typically used to kind of narrow the range of light that is coming in when you're doing outdoor shots. But what I found is that it actually reduces the flicker that you get from artificial LED lights. So, if you're doing studio photography of your Gunpla, for instance,
Yeah.
one of the things that I always can't stand is that like the fluorescent lights and the LED lights that I use to light my setup, you can kind of see these bars in the
Yeah.
camera.
Mhm.
This filter knocks them out because
Oh,
it
that's pretty good.
compresses that light. So like I said, I'm going to do a whole video on that. I'm going to do like, some side by side comparison shots of with and without the filter. But something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's good. That's good content. I could probably use that.
But yeah, that about wraps it up. I think for today, we kind of stretched out our topic a little bit, but like I said, I really do want to stress how much I like this high grade Zeta, and
Yeah.
if you are going to get a high grade Zeta, this would be the one to get.
And it's
Don't
available right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
You have
do not
until
miss out
June.
on it because if you do, you're gonna pay $80 for it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anything else that I'm forgetting, Adam?
No, that's it. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, hey, thank you guys for hanging out with us, watching today, keeping the chat lively. I will, of course, be hanging out on Discord later. So let me know if I forgot anything about these two Zetas. If maybe you have images from Double Zeta that show some of these design changes, but I haven't been able to find them. Again, thank you, Ian, our supporter, for sponsoring this show. And
Yeah.
yeah, if you haven't checked out that RX-78-2 explained video, go check that out right now. Thank you,
Thank you.
Adam, for joining.
Of course.
Catch you all later.
Yep. See y'all.